Hi Usama, how are you?
Alhamdulillah, how are you?
I'm fine. Um, anyway, for those who are watching this video, Osama is here to guide us about Fulbright. It's Fulbright season and students need help with Fulbright applications. Osama has, if I'm not wrong, served as a Fulbright selection committee member yourself, right?
Yes, I've served on the interview panel twice, and I have also processed many of the written applications for Fulbright, over 100 of them.
Oh, and how long have you been doing it? कितने times आप कर रहे हैं?
I've been involved with the Fulbright selection process on and off for the last 4 years now.
Okay, that's great. और इस टाइम में किस किस्म की applications देखी? What were like few applications that stood out? Anything that just stood out?
So many over the years, but I think that I really remember is there was one police officer who was applying for a degree within peace and conflict studies, and I thought that was very exciting. And I remember that there was a philosophy major who was applying for a degree in creative writing, and I think he got it. And I was very, very, very happy about that because, often in Pakistan, we think that unless you're becoming a doctor or an engineer, there's no scope in life and you will never be having a successful career. But that's the magic of the Fulbright program. Regardless of what you want to do, as long as you can make a case it's going to create social impact, you really get that opportunity. It's amazing.
That's great. That's great. And what's your story, Osama? कहाँ से आपने अपनी education, like what was your university? आप खुद Fulbright पे गए? किस university में पढ़े? Just walk us through your story.
My own story is that I did my bachelor's in physics from LUMS, लेकिन मेरी जिंदगी बदल गई थी when I undertook a 2-month first aid program. So basically, LUMS has this emergency medical services department where students get trained as first responders and then they deal with emergencies on campus, जैसे Rescue 122 के ambulance staff करते हैं. So I dealt with over 250 emergencies and it absolutely changed my life. And in my last year, I became head of training of that program and मुझे बहुत मजा आया. तो उसके बाद I became a teacher and I found my calling in education. And so I applied to the Fulbright. After 2 years of teaching in schools in Pakistan, I applied for a master's in education with a focus in curriculum and teaching. And that's what led me to get a full scholarship to Columbia University, which is where I completed my Fulbright program. And then I've been back in Pakistan ever since.
That's great. And what was your master's in again?
My master's was in curriculum and teaching. And at the same time, while I was in the US, I got the opportunity to become a licensed emergency medical technician from New York State. So I was able to combine both these passions and take them forward.
Perfect. And how was your experience in the US? How was it different from Pakistani universities? Just give us.
Well, I mean, it's phenomenal. People are super, super welcoming. I was in New York and my name is Usama. And I used to go everywhere wearing a shalwar kameez. And everyone was very, very accepting of me. A few people blogged about me because they thought it was very special. I was wearing shalwar kameez. And then they were just surprised that I was wearing it because I like shalwar kameez, not because I was trying to actively promote my cultural identity. बहुत मजा आया. Made friendships that lasted a lifetime. I got to travel to Hawaii on a fully funded trip to present at a conference. उसके अलावा got to travel all over the US. Also got the opportunity to go down to Mexico because you don't need a visa. And made many, many, many really strong friendships that have actually led me to start my own company called Saving 9. So phenomenal experience.
कुछ लोगों का आजकल जो है ना ट्रस्ट ये जो कन्वेंशनल एजुकेशन है उससे हटता जा रहा है. वन थिंग दैट आई गेट फ्रॉम स्टूडेंट्स व्हेन आई एम टॉकिंग टू देम इज कि हमने बैचलर्स कर लिए है, मास्टर्स करेंगे, क्या फायदा है, स्किल्स सीखने चाहिए, यूनिवर्सिटी में कोई एडमिशन लेके फुलब्राइट पे लेके कोई फायदा नहीं है. हाउ डू यू रिस्पॉन्ड टू दैट? डू यू थिंक दैट्स ट्रू? डू यू थिंक
Well, you're getting a fully funded ride to go live out your dream. I mean, what more do you want as a reason to go and do it? I mean, over 2 years, you're going to have excellent financial support. You're going to build a phenomenal network. by traveling to another part of the world, you're going to learn so much. You're going to bond with people from all over the world. You're going to have your perspectives on almost everything changed. I mean, if that isn't what life is all about, then what is life all about? It's about gaining experiences. It's about learning. It's about building friendships. It's about growing. And almost nothing pulls that off like the Fulbright program does.
Perfect. So, Khair, I just asked this question to get the viewers a little excited by Fulbright, क्योंकि इनके बड़े सारे reservations होते हैं कि वहाँ जाके अच्छा अगर ये solve हो गया, then they are like कि यार जो पाकिस्तान में आके हम 2 साल रहेंगे, हमें जाने नहीं देंगे, उसमें भी लोगों की काफी misconceptions हैं. They think things like आपको job नहीं मिलती इस दौरान. Is that true? क्या problem होता है जब Fulbright program खत्म करके आप वापस आते हो?
Job applications are definitely not a problem at all. Once you're a Fulbright scholar, you have a vast network, and Fulbright is a super respected program across the world. So getting a job in Pakistan is definitely not an issue. Will probably be in demand entities as well. While I was in the US, I was also working as a consultant with the Norwegian Refugee Council, which is based in Norway. So I was an international consultant while doing my Fulbright program. So people don't need to worry about, having employment opportunities. You will get many employment opportunities. Yes, there is definitely a 2-year residency requirement, and I think ethically people should fulfill it because, I mean, you've been given all this funding because the spirit is you come back to Pakistan and you do something for Pakistan, right? And I think ethically, one shouldn't try to find a loophole. One should come back and one should complete the requirements. But, formally speaking, there is no check on you, or if you, for example, decide to work within another country, say the UK or Canada or whatever, before you are allowed to work in the US, you should have completed your 2-year residency in Pakistan. And that doesn't have to be continuous. You can do it in, little bits and chunks. You can spend 2-3 months at a time in Pakistan. But the total amount of time you must have spent is 2 years in Pakistan before you are, eligible to get a work visa in the US. And lots of people just directly do their PhDs after doing their masters on the Fulbright. If you get a fully funded scholarship to...
अच्छा उसामा मुझे ये बताएं कि what are the top 3 things that you enjoy about Fulbright? What are the top 3 perks being a Fulbright scholar? How would you rank it one by one?
Well, I think the first thing is definitely the fact that once you are a Fulbright scholar, there is a lot of respect you get regardless of wherever you go in the world. It's a very, 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 very recognized scholarship. So, बहुत ज़्यादा आपको respect मिलता है in your professional sphere, in your personal sphere. It gives you an incredible network to work with. Because of it, I have also been able to get a lot of funding for, the work that I'm doing. For example, teaching people how to save lives. I've gotten a lot of funding from Harvard University, Columbia University, the United States Institute of Peace. And all of these things were in part because I have an American connection that came from my Fulbright scholarship. So I would say that would be number one. Number two would be, I think that, it's just, I feel like I have, really changed after spending 2 years in the US, like really changed. I've gained a lot of empathy. I've gained, like a very, very different way of thinking about things. When you come back to Pakistan after 2 years, you look at things very differently. You begin to really appreciate all the beautiful things that Pakistan has about its culture and what it has to offer. But at the same time, you really begin to see that a lot of things could be done very differently. And, after spending 2 years in the US and practicing, talking to so many different kinds of people, you learn to become a little bit, more confident and more open-minded. You are able to push back more against certain social norms, which, otherwise pull us inside our boxes. I think that would be number two. And number three, I think, would just be the fact that, you have made so many friends and you continue to, spend time with them. I mean, you go to trips to Mexico, to New Orleans, to California. You've bonded with these people over 2 years so much that, they become a really, really close circle of friends. It's like, can you put any kind of value on the friends you have? You can't, right? It's just, it's just, I'm so grateful that I was able to make such close friends. I would say that's three things. Number one, prestige. Number two, really changing your perspectives on everything and giving you the ability to counter cultural stigmas in Pakistan. And number three, the friendships.
And I like the prestige wala part because when there's a Fulbright Katappa, in short, there's a lot of prestige and raising fundings for your startups. Whatever you're doing becomes considerably frictionless, right? So yeah, that could be something very practical. Let's talk about the application. Just my
I
student.
mean, that's worth elaborating on. I mean, you know, if you go to any entity within Pakistan, whether you're talking about the government or you're talking about corporations or you're talking about development sector organizations, you will find that the people who are leading them are very likely going to be a Fulbright scholar. So it's a phenomenal network.
Yeah, network is strong. Let's come to the application. जिसमें लोगों को बहुत सारी queries होती हैं. And let's start with the Fulbright SOP, Statement of Purpose. What's your advice to students for crafting a good SOP?
Do not write a sob story, please. Please do not say that, you know, you are someone who has been very, 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 very suppressed, and because of that, you know, just don't spend 90% of your essay talking about your personal tragedies. This is not to say that you haven't had those personal tragedies, but try not to write your essay in a way that it seems like you're trying to garner sympathy from the reader.
Mm-hmm.
Instead, talk about your experiences, talk about how they've helped you grow, talk about how they've changed you and how they've, you know, given you the ability to now do something to help others. If you could only gain extra knowledge from a master's, right? I mean, like, lots of people, like if you look at Mukhtara Mai, right? You know, she, you know, suffered very, very famously through a very, very public sexual assault case. And, you know, to this day, she does a lot of work to counter the injustices that occur against women. You know, or you have certain Pakistanis who are campaigning for disability rights because they themselves have suffered stigma at the hands of these things. You know, so if you are going to talk about your personal difficulties in life, by all means, go ahead and do so, but don't write them with this lens that you're trying to just get sympathy and say that, you know, I've had a very difficult life, so give me the Fulbright. Instead, talk about how you have found a strength within you, you have found perspectives within you, and how these things give you empathy to be able to connect with people who are underprivileged and who are in need of help. And this is why you are well positioned to, you know, do something for Pakistan after getting the Fulbright. That's the way you should talk about it. I think that would be advice number one. Advice number two is, if you don't have, you know, any sort of personal tragedy you want to talk about, that is absolutely fine. Talk about your passions, talk about your work experiences, talk about what you've observed, talk about a transformational trip you took, anything. What people are looking for in the Fulbright essay is how you think, how you analyze the world, and what motivates you. Why are you so driven to create social impact and change? And why would you be a very effective cultural ambassador? You know, if you show them through your essay that you are someone who can respect alternative perspectives, you're not someone who's very close-minded. These things are what help make a good SOP.
All right. So don't make a sad story. What do you have to say about people who make it an autobiography? Like they just, you know.
It's a statement. It's a personal statement. It's meant to be personal. It's meant to talk about your life story, right? But talk about it in a way that, you know, connects with what the essay is asking you. The essay is asking what motivates you, what life experiences motivate you to go for the Fulbright, and number two, how do those experiences equip you to do on the Fulbright and create social impact upon your return, right? So you can't just talk about all that you have suffered. You have to connect that suffering with, you know, the larger world and how you can create impact in it and how you've grown from it.
And it doesn't need to be suffering necessarily, right? It could be
No, definitely not. I've seen some beautiful essays written about, you know, people who have suffered a lot of trauma, like immense trauma, And those were very moving essays, but they were moving not only because the person had suffered, they were moving because the person had found their way through that suffering. And, it had made them so empathetic towards other people, and they really had a genuine motivation to do something about it. Right? That's the difference. Yeah, that would be my advice on that. But again, you don't have to talk about suffering. You can talk about, working at Telenor. You can talk about working, with an NGO. You can talk about teaching inside the classroom and what you saw over there and how that transformed you. Talk about what you are passionate about and what you are applying for. If you are a computer science applicant, talk about, some really crazy program you created that, had an unintended effect on your university. There's so much you can talk about.
Right. So basically you are saying you have to talk about your experiences and connect them with what you want to be, what you want to do, how they shaped into what you are, and how they made you, go for the scholarship, and how they pushed you into thinking about the society and the changes that you want to see in it.
It's really important to highlight that you are socially motivated, right? That you are motivated to bring about change, and that you can bring about change on the basis of your personal experiences.
All right.
You have to show that you are someone who thinks about the larger picture. You must never give the impression in a Fulbright essay that you are someone who is doing this simply because you want to now get a master's, because you want to earn more money and you want to go abroad. No, you have to really make a strong case that you are someone who is going to help transform Pakistan upon your return and is going to really play a powerful role in the US as an ambassador or as a cultural exchange person.
All right.
Think about it. Someone is investing approximately $200,000 into your life. Why would they want to do so? They want to do so because they're trying to counter the brain drain that is occurring within Pakistan. They want to counter this by bringing excellent, educated people back to Pakistan who are driven to create social change. The purpose of this scholarship is not to simply, propel you in your career. So I think it's very important to remember that and to write with that spirit inside your personal statement.
Perfect. And what about the study objectives essay? Like what
the study objectives essay is supposed to be, okay, now you've talked about what emotionally, motivates you. Now the study objectives essay is all about, okay, what have you actually done in your studying? What have you actually done in your professional life? What skills have you learned? What knowledge have you gained that prepares you to be able to now do this master's and succeed in your master's academically, and then allows you at the same time to do well in your professional career afterwards? So for example, I studied physics back at LUMS and I was doing a master's in education, which is a very different field, right? But I talked about how I want to actually reform science education. So having that science perspective is so important for me. And at the same time, I took a lot of writing courses while I was in university. And so I do actually have the academic background to be able to do well in a writing-based program. Because I've been a teacher for several years, I do have strong professional experience that allows me to be someone who has a lot of rich things to talk about inside a classroom in the US. And, then upon coming back to Pakistan, because I already have all these linkages with schools, I plan on leveraging that to be able to create change within our society. This is what you're supposed to talk about in your study objectives. What is it about your previous academic and professional experience that allows you to become successful as a student abroad and at the same time as a professional upon your return?
All right. So if I'm to draw some differences between the two essays, SOP के अंदर आपने अपने experiences को connect करना है with what you want to do, और study objectives के अंदर आपने अपने skills जो आपने सीखे अपने professional experiences से उनको connect करना है कि how they will enable you into doing what you want to do.
You can think of it as the personal statement is about your heart and the study objectives is about your mind. Okay. Right? So the personal statement is about your heart. आप दिल से क्यों करना चाहते हैं? आप दिल से इस करियर को क्यों pursue करना चाहते हैं? आप क्यों तब्दीली लाना चाहते हैं पाकिस्तान में? आप क्यों अमेरिका में पढ़ना चाहते हैं? दिल से. What personal experiences motivate you, right? And the study objectives is about, okay, ठीक है, motivation मेरे पास है, अब मेरे पास यहाँ क्या capacity है, मैं कैसे दिखा सकता हूँ कि आपके पास, मेरे पास capacity है कि मैं तब्दीली ला सकूँ और मैं वाकई में इस प्रोग्राम में excel कर सकूँ.
Perfect. What about LORs? आपको जो आपके letters of recommendations हैं, कितने लेने चाहिए, and what makes a good LOR good?
What makes a good letter of recommendation is it should be very personalized. It should not be, I am pleased to write a letter of recommendation for Sikandar Mirza. He got an A in my class. Kind regards, whoever, right? It should not be a 2-3 liner. It should not seem like something this is copy pasted. It should not seem like it is impersonal. A strong letter of recommendation is one that shows that the person who is recommending you knows you well, can talk about you in a personalized fashion, can use lots of examples to highlight what kind of person you are. You know, when I was working on a project with Sikandar, I was able to see that he was the first one to come up with this idea, that idea. And, you know, his idea was so powerful that we turned it into a marketable product that is now succeeding so well. This says a lot more than saying Sikandar was the top 3 students in my course. So it's about showing rather than telling in your letter of recommendation. A nice long letter of recommendation goes a long way. So I would say rather than, you know, getting a letter of recommendation from some really, really high up bureaucrat who won't have the time to write it properly, or, you know, some university professor who will just copy paste your letter of recommendation, and just because they're prestigious, you're like, okay, no, don't do that. Instead, get it written by someone who knows you well, can recommend you in a very detailed fashion that sounds personalized, and it'll go a very long way.
But if I keep all the factors common, let's say I have 6 options to choose from, और वो 6 के 6 लोग मुझे personally बहुत अच्छे तरीके से जानते हैं. उस केस में तो I should go for the people जिनका foreign exposure है या जिनका profile strong है, no? Shouldn't that be the case?
Yeah, if you could, you know, keep all the other things balanced, then yes, you should ideally go for the one who has the most impressive career.
All right. And should your letter of recommendations connect directly with the field you are choosing, or letter of recommendation के अंदर जो आपके referees हैं वो generally आपकी qualities के बारे में बात कर सकते हैं? Are they like
it should definitely connect with what you are wanting to study later on. I mean, for example, you want to do your PhD, your master's in physics, right? So you would think that, okay, this means I should get 3 letters of recommendation from my physics professors. But no, it doesn't have to be that way. You can get a professional recommendation as well. And that person can talk about, you know, how you have used your knowledge of physics in your professional career, how you have strong thinking skills, how you are an excellent cultural ambassador, how you have excellent personal speaking skills, but relate all of this to how you are ultimately going to be an effective master's candidate in physics and what you plan to do later on in life, right? It can't just be written without the person writing it realizing that you're applying for a Fulbright scholarship. He should highlight, you know, that you are going to be an excellent leader. You're going to be someone who has good communication skills. You're going to be someone who can represent Pakistan in a good light. You're someone who is able to manage high pressure deadlines. You're someone who thinks across different lines. This should be, all of these things should be highlighted.
And so that brings me to the conclusion that we should give some guidelines to our referees कि ये चीजें highlight करें आप लोग. Should we do that, or should we just, you know, leave?
Definitely, I think the best thing to do would be to actually sit down with them and tell them, you know, this is what I'm applying for. This is the Fulbright scholarship. You know, I'd really appreciate it if you could highlight these things about me that, you know, you've learned about me by working with me. And then, you know, hope for the best. But try to identify letters, you know, people who can write really good recommendations. You want people who are good writers.
Right. And what if there's a big overlap between 2 letters? Because मैंने देखा है कि वो referees को reach out करते हैं and जो letter of recommendations है वो literally ऐसा लग रहा होता है कि ये एक ही बंदे ने दोनों लिखे हुए हैं. Is that a red flag, or is that digestible for the Fulbright?
Yeah, well, I mean, naturally, you don't ideally want to do that, because the thing is that if it looks like it's been written by the same person, then they're obviously not going to carry the same amount of authenticity. Because you have to remember, these letters of recommendation are not only shared with the Fulbright, they're also shared with the universities you apply after you get the Fulbright. So even if the Fulbright, is a little bit kind with you and it's like, "Acha, theek hai, hame pata hai ki shayad isne khud hi likha ho." Baad mein, when you tell them, you want to apply to Stanford, MIT, Harvard, or Columbia, you can be assured that those very, 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 very competitive admissions committees are going to microanalyze and be sure whether this is something authentic that's been written or not.
Perfect. Okay. What's a good enough GRE score for Fulbright? I get this question all the time. Everyone's asking me कि हम minimum कितना score करें हमारा Fulbright में हो जाएगा या what's a good enough score?
Well, I mean, the thing is that there is a certain amount of weightage that is given to your GRE score. Having a high GRE score is going to make a difference, but it is not the deciding factor. Because, like the Fulbright also scores you on your essays, and there is a significant amount of your score that comes from your essays. Then there is a significant amount of score that comes from your general academic profile, right? So, your GPA, etc., all of that. And that comes from your professional experience, and that comes from whether you are a woman, whether you are someone who is a minority. All of these things are given weightage as well. So I would say, if you meet the Fulbright GRE minimum score requirements, then you should definitely apply. And it doesn't matter whether you have a low GPA or a low GRE, as long as you can make a very powerful case that, you are someone who is going to make a difference and you have the capacity. And obviously in your essays, you're going to have to justify why you did not get a strong score. For example, you could argue that, I'm someone who has a certain kind of learning disability, and the GRE standardized testing is not designed for me. And so I was not able to do well. And because my Pakistani universities did not, cater to my learning needs, I wasn't able to necessarily perform well in their standardized tests. But you can see that I've done really well in my real life work. You could make a case like that, right? So what I'm saying is, obviously, if this is factually true, but what I'm saying is that do not be disheartened if you have a low GRE score, you have a low GPA. I know people who've gotten into Harvard on the Fulbright with a 2.28 GPA. I know people who've gotten into the Fulbright with scores that are in their 140s as well. So it depends on what you present as an overall picture. No one is saying that the GRE does not count. It does count. Your grades do count, but they are not the only things that count. And that is what makes this scholarship so amazing.
All right. Aapke experience mein, what was the lowest GRE score that you saw in a principal candidate? What was the lowest, if you recall?
I'm sorry, I don't recall, but I do remember that generally most candidates end up having scores within their 150s, usually. So, you would expect to have something like 152, 156, something like that. Another thing that makes a difference is whether the candidate is from, an English medium university or whether you're from a public university. If you're from a public university, they're not going to be so strict on your English. But if you're from an English medium university, you had better do relatively better within the verbal section, right? Similarly, if you are applying for a STEM subject in which you need to have a strong math score, then that is also going to make a difference. Having a strong quantitative score, if you're applying for an engineering or a science subject, is going to make a big difference.
All right. So 150 verbal ki section, like if you have 150, 150 in both, you're saying that 300 and plus is safe? Is that what you're saying?
There is no such thing as safe. There are people who've gotten full GRE scores who have gotten rejected, and there are people who've gotten 140s and have been accepted. So the thing is that it's not just about your GPA, and it is not just about your GRE. It is about your overall package. But these things are taken into consideration.
All right. And since we have...
I want to re-emphasize this, that there are people who have gotten very low GRE scores who have gotten the Fulbright to top universities, and there are people who've gotten full GRE scores who have been rejected from the Fulbright because they did not have other things in their profile.
All right, perfect. GPA काफी दफा mention हुआ, which brings me to the forbidden question. What's the GPA that you need for Fulbright?
There is no GPA requirement for the Fulbright, but please, obviously, you need to have passed university. And if you've not gotten a good academic score, if you've gotten like a GPA of 2.5, 2.9 out of 4, then, make a case in your essay. Talk about why you got that. Talk about, for example, you weren't able to focus on your grades because there was something happening in your personal life, or there was a medical condition, or perhaps the pandemic occurred, and due to the pandemic you had to manage certain things, or perhaps you had some professors who were very unjust with you, or perhaps you were actually launching your own business while you were studying, and so your grades took a tussle, but you did fantastically in your professional career. There's many ways to go about it.
But you have to be honest, right? You cannot just make up things. You have to be honest. अगर बंदा honest नहीं है तो पकड़ा
You
जाता है.
need to be honest, because you need to understand that it's not just about what you write on paper. After that, you are going to be interviewed, and the interview panel.
Okay.
You have to realize that it's not just what you write in your essays, because everyone knows that your essays could be written by someone else, or your essays could be, not entirely factually true. They could be stretching the truth. So that's why, you are also interviewed. And that interview has a Fulbright alumni on it, who are very experienced, right? So they can tell whether you are being authentic or not being authentic, because you're going to be interviewed for a good 15 to 20 minutes. So usme it becomes very hard to, maintain something that is not entirely true and it's not entirely authentic. So my advice to you is be sincere, but at the same time, put your best foot forward, right? If you have not studied for 2 years because you weren't interested in studying, then say that, because the way it was being taught to me, I was not interested in studying. I lost my motivation. And this helped me realize what would be a good teaching system, what we need to reform in university. And that's what drives me to now get the Fulbright, because I want to change the education sector. There are so many ways to turn any downturn in your life into something that is positive, that is a rich experience that you can wear with pride.
Sure.
Is what I'm saying.
All right. So in short, अगर आपका 3 से कम GPA है तो apply करें. Right. Okay, perfect. And any other tips on your university preferences, your choice of field?
Well, I mean, the thing is that I never gave any university preferences in my time. I told them, send me where you will. Aap logo ko behtar pata hai. And then, they ended up sending me to Columbia University. तो मतलब कि you don't necessarily have to advocate कि मुझे ये university पे भेजो. So a lot of people do, and they make the case that, I want to go to this university because of this professor or this program that I really want to do. But I'm just saying that ultimately it is the Fulbright committee that decides. There are also people who have gotten into places like MIT, etc., and have not been able to go because another university gave them more scholarship, and so Fulbright had a better cost-saving measure with that university.
What about
so this is something to keep in mind. So, like, for example, you get into MIT, Georgia Tech, Harvard, and I don't know, say University of Maryland, right? And let's suppose that Georgia Tech gives you 60% scholarship and MIT does not give you scholarship. So the Fulbright is going to send you most likely to Georgia Tech because it's more cost-saving. And it's in a very, very prestigious university as well. So this is something to keep in mind, that ultimate decision of which university you go to is decided by the Fulbright, and you cannot influence that.
Okay. And what about your choice of field? ज़रूरी है कि आपने जो बैचलर्स में किया है या मास्टर्स में किया है, बैचलर्स में किया है primarily, वही आप मास्टर्स में कर रहे हो? Is that necessary?
No, not at all. I jumped from physics to education. There are people who jump from engineering into Farsi. There are people who jump from क्या कहते हैं, philosophy into doing an MBA. Every single combination is absolutely fine except clinical medicine. And you just have to explain through your personal statement and your study objectives how you are prepared to be able to do this and why you are motivated to do this. You can apply for anything. ऐसे requirement नहीं है कि you need to have a background in XYZ in order to do this. But you obviously have to prove that you are able to actually do this master's.
So changing your field is okay, as long as you can connect it with
Changing your field is actually encouraged because it shows you have diverse thinking. You know, it shows you have exposure to multiple things. You have an interdisciplinary mindset. The Fulbright loves these things.
All right. What are your top 3 advices to Fulbright aspirants? Top 3 or 4. It's okay if you have 2 and not a 3.
Well, the first one would be to start writing now because I think the deadline is approaching.
Yeah.
So get down to it and puri jaan lagao apne essays pe. It makes a big difference. Don't show it to a lot of people. You will go crazy. Show your essays to 2 or 3 people maximum who you trust will give you good feedback. Too many cooks spoil the broth. Number 2, definitely try to get a strong GRE score. It's going to make a difference. Number 3, talk to your professors and or bosses or whoever and try to get them to write you very nice customized letters of recommendation, which will take them time to write. So tell them now that you want to do this.
Yeah.
This is my first bit of advice. The second bit would be that it's not too late to add something to your profile. The Fulbright wants you to do something other than just be book smart, right? So if you can take up a volunteer initiative, if you can, do some sort of project and put it online, do it because it'll add to your profile for the Fulbright. Have a very nice LinkedIn profile because sometimes when people are reviewing your application, they look you up on LinkedIn as well to see whether all you're saying is actually proven by the internet too. So, having a portfolio online is a big plus, especially if you are applying to something like arts or media design or media studies or journalism or even physics. Having some online portfolio of the work you've done adds credit and credibility to what you are doing on your written application. These would be my top pieces of advice.
All right. लेकिन ज़रूरी तो
And apply. Everyone should apply because there is no GPA cutoff. There is a GRE cutoff, of 138 and 136, I believe. You can look up the latest on the website, but provided you meet those minimum requirements, you should apply because you stand a chance.
But again, that brings me to the conclusion कि ज़रूरी तो नहीं है ना कि आपके पास कोई multinational का बहुत कोई stellar किस्म का experience हो. It's just a component of your application. You've got your essays, you've got your GRE score, you've got your GPA, and of course your resume, right? They all what you lack.
Absolutely no need for any multinational fancy experience.
Yeah.
What matters is what you actually did. There are lots of people who have experience with multinationals and they did nothing that is exciting. So, you need to talk about what you've done. You can have worked for 4 years at a local NGO that paid you 20,000 rupees per month or 10,000 rupees per month. That is not the point. The point is, what did you do? What rich experiences did you have? That is what gives the Fulbright Committee evidence that you are a change maker, that you are someone who is motivated.
But you can also apply if you just recently graduated, right?
Absolutely. You don't need to have any professional background. You can apply as a university student in their last year. And then you need to make the case that you've done some rich extracurriculars or you've done some really exciting academic work. You can't just be someone who's gotten a really nice GPA and that's it. You have to show them that, you've done something that shows that you are a change maker or initiative taker of some kind.
Perfect. What was your GPA and your GRE score when you were applying?
My GPA was 3.4 and my GRE score was 162 and 164. So they were fairly respectable, but I know lots of people who have, gotten the Fulbright and had significantly lesser scores. And I also want to emphasize that I have failed a few courses back in university, so my transcript isn't as beautiful as it sounds. So what I'm getting at is that do not think that you cannot apply for the Fulbright. I should also mention that before I got the Fulbright, I got rejected from every single university I applied to. So don't think that, if you have been applying to universities, वैसे and you haven't gotten in, that you can't get in if you apply for the Fulbright. Do apply. Everyone has a history of, not having the success they want. Don't let that prevent you from applying. It can possibly open a door to a fantastic, amazing opportunity that you will, benefit from for the rest of your life.
Perfect. Thank you so much, Usama. This video is going to help a lot of students because the Fulbright deadline is approaching and they have all sorts of questions. This is going to help a lot of people. Just do a synopsis. You're saying you're asking them to start working on their essays ASAP, to reach out to their referees ASAP, and not hold themselves back from applying if they have a GPA less than 3, or if they do not have a good GRE score, or if they do not have a stellar experience in their resume to show off, right?
Yes, in fact, if I recall correctly, there was even a university dropout who got the Fulbright. You could look up his talk online. So, I mean, I think he ran away from university. So, and there's a drug addict. There was a former drug addict who went to Harvard on the Fulbright. So what I'm saying is that, it really depends on how you present yourself and what you made of the suffering you went through, what you made of the life experiences and the failures you had.
Perfect, Usama. Thank you so much for your time, taking your time out and making this video possible. Thank you so much.
Thank you for having me. Thank you, Sikander.